Alright, so welcome everyone. This one is going to be a reading, a volunteered reading, what we already seen from the thumbnail, from someone who actually wanted to remain anonymous, but that's totally fine because I got to read the actual chart with this person. If I make a mistake mentioning that their identified gender, it's not a big problem. I just want to say they is what I'm going to use. I'm going to try to use it because yeah, they didn't specify that one, so I'm not really sure. So, but in any case, here we go. So this person's chart is, as you can see, they were in Taurus. Sun was in Taurus. So this person typically has, Taurus. People with Sun in Taurus are very stubborn. But that's the first thing that came to me because when we were talking, it's like, not really Taurus kind of feel when I got the vibe from him. So there you go. So now you know him. But I got a more different vibe. I definitely got sort of that sort of Gemini sort of feel with him. Like he was very curious, very, had a lot of questions. So that kind of popped up a little bit more. And I understand why, because of the Virgo thing, right? You can see here, his ascendant, it was in Virgo. So that means his Mercury was also going to be affecting this. So his Mercury was in Gemini. It definitely is like the double Gemini sort of thing, double Mercury sort of feel to it. But I did tell him that when you have your ascendant in Virgo, here we have it in 21 degrees. We look at the Mercury sign because that planet is going to rule Virgo. But because Mercury rules both Gemini and Virgo, it's pretty much a given. However, I did mention to him that Chiron fits into Virgo. So Chiron would rule. When I say would, I mean I think it's pretty much given. Where's Chiron here? I already went through his chart. I should know. It's right there. So Chiron was 27 degrees Gemini. Right? So right away, both Mercury and Chiron rule his ascendant. So he comes off as, people might think he's very concerned about his health naturally, with cleanliness, perfection, inquisitiveness, very much, that Mercury thing. But because of the Chiron there, he's very much concerned with his health. A lot of health stuff probably might come up in terms of at least first impressions. His appearance might look like he's always well groomed. He's always wants to look appropriate and decent in front of people, but at the same time very youthful and kind of very, he's you can say sort of light looking. He's probably skinny is the term. I'm not really sure if that's what you want to call it, but yeah, you could say that. Definitely like a youthful complexion. That's what people might see him as, or how he packages himself to the world. Now we did go through some of the planets. When I drew up his chart, it was basically, we didn't go through hHAHA because I didn't go through that. I just still knew. But we did go through some other planets. We kind of already talked about those before. Like for example, Ixion is something to do with violence and being violated. It's about second chances or something like that. Quora, what is it called? Quora is about was it about destiny or something? Oh, divine gifts, or something to do with ability to have specific abilities to manifest, maybe not manifest, but like definitely like divine blessings. And then we also went through Sedna, which was Sedna was, I think, an old character. His character from mythologies was from an ancient. It's not Greek, and Sedna has a lot to do with the choices we make with when it comes to whether we are victimhood, whether we choose to be the hero or the victim of our circumstances. So yeah, so that's Sedna. But I know we went through Orcus, something about, I forgot what it was. But we went through it in person, so that's not a big deal. What I'm going to go through is the bigger planets, the main ones, starting with, of course, with the ascendant and therefore the descendant. But I did tell him that when it comes to the ascendant, you have to look at the descendant as well. So the descendant was in Pisces, naturally, because of Virgo. And the descendant was actually Ceres and North Node was conjunct the descendant. So that means that his it's more towards relationships than what he should technically focus on more in his past lives. Or that's what it tends to be, not necessarily should, but because it's conjunct, the series right here is conjunct North Node. Usually what that means is that it's focusing on self-care. In particular when it comes to his own health, which is the 6th house. It's in the 6th house, but because it's conjunct the 7th house, it shows a need or the soul's need to go towards focusing on taking care of himself and his health before relating with anyone, putting anyone else first. Basically, him first, you could say. So, and then basically kind of finding a way to become more nurturing and having unconditional love combined with that North Node, and trusting that his natural abilities, his environment, apparently Ceres rules epigenetics, which is how the environment affects our DNA. So with that in mind, if you think about it, okay, it's tied to the 2nd house, but it's tied to the 7th house, which is about general relationships, contracts, agreements, marriages even, things that you say yes to, right? But it's also the shadow. It represents a shadow because it ties into the 1st house. So with Ceres and North Node there, he has to watch out for the shadows he encounters with people who probably naturally, because in the past he was he probably comes from a family that was very much like, very aloof and not there at all, not present, and there was a lot of emotional hidden things like that didn't deal with. Everything was kind of just put to the side. Whatever, life is whatever the fuck, just don't care. La-di-da. So a lot of like spiritual hoo-ha that wasn't real and genuine and not grounded. So this is now why he appears to be grounded. He appears to be like, he's learning to at least see that when he packaged himself, his soul chose to put himself in this box and saying, I want the world to see me as perfect. I want the world to see me as a healthy individual, a lively person, a youthful person, very much grounded and very much connected with society. But that's because of the shadow that he experienced when he was growing up. Any sort of growing up experience. This doesn't necessarily mean that it's really childhood stuff, but basically yes, or with family, but typically yes. So with Ceres and the North Node there, definitely he has to learn how to approach the future and what's ahead of him, because it's the nodes, as you already know, the nodes is like the dragon. The South Node is the tail, the North Node is the head. Where you're heading, this is why we say head in English. This is why when we head towards something unknown, it's quite scary. The tail is like, we already know what that is, which kind of makes me think about how when we don't know, which is like here, it ties into physically, like the body itself, like any body really. Well, any body with a head and a butt, whatever. So when you're grounded further down here, that's kind of more like familiarity. That's more like territory. It's always somehow represented when it's something to do with grounding, something to do with gravity. It's connected. There's that pull. It's an energy thing. When planet Earth, whatever you're in some sort of heavenly body, whatever you're stuck to, that's part of the evolutionary or cosmically evolutionary process of living and therefore identifying with form in this, at least on planet Earth. That makes sense. When you're grounded, it's a little bit more rooted, it's what you're more used to. Anything above that here is kind of like unknown, it's mysterious, I don't know, I don't understand it, right? So he has to kind of focus more on this up here and use the gifts he has from his past lives, to bring in medicine, his own experiences with health, his own experience with what's good for society, really, what's good for the world. And the gifts he's still learning is to trust more, to have to be a little more, trust his intuition and trust his gifts beyond the intuition itself, which is like connectedness with the angels, possibly. Good, this is Pisces, right? It's all about intuition and unconditional love, that as well. So transcending the limitations of what is health, right? So perhaps he could focus more on providing that for everyone else. Like what, it shouldn't just also be about labels, because when you get into labels, that's the unconscious side of Virgo, which is like, it has to be perfect, it has to be this, it has to be methodical, it has to be... No, it doesn't have to be. It just means he has to take the gifts from those things, the positive things, the more wholesome things from his past life into his current life. And with the focus more on specifically self-care, because it is tied to that. And that in itself, by taking care of himself, by taking care of his journey, by being more trusting and really like not completely letting go, but you don't want to, a head doesn't float around by its side. Well, maybe, but it's the whole body, it's the whole form, so it has to take from the past. So he still takes from the past and brings it to the present and into what's ahead. So yeah, so that's that. And then we went into Mercury. I don't remember the exact order, but we went to Mercury, explained to him that because Mercury and Chiron are actually right here, it's conjunct. It's interesting because it's literally like the three planets, including Venus right here, are conjunct. It's his ascendant is also kind of it's reflected in these planets as well. It's a square. These planets are actually squaring his ascendant. So that means a lot of his reputation base, a lot of it is knowing how to feel more, work with the knowledge and experience in the relationship he has with people, specifically like the public, especially when you have Mercury here, and also Venus, specifically Venus, because Venus was in Cancer. So that means it's like Venus in Cancer, people want to really connect, like nesting, connecting, like real, are you my family? Are you home? Are we really connected at a deep emotional level? Otherwise, I don't feel safe. Right? Especially with 0 degrees there, it's still kind of like this new energy. It's a baby energy. It's almost basic, sort of like these are my needs kind of thing. But with Chiron there and Mercury, he gets to know, and it's a good thing it's not retrograde, but at the same time retrograde makes him stronger. But the Chiron there is he's learning from the experiences he's had to whatever he's lost in the past, specifically like here, it could be anything related to Gemini. So that means like the loss of communication, the loss of sibling stuff. Okay, I'm not sure about that one, but definitely with communication, knowledge itself, it feels like it's lost him. He's like, and he probably still goes through it today, where he doesn't know the facts. But again, there's the North Node thing, where he should embrace the fact that, oh, if these planets are, or because, or rather, because these planets are squaring his ascendant, they're also squaring his descendant. So that means that whatever path he's taken, specifically pertaining to the North Node and his series, to self-care and unconditional love, really like hone in on the losses. That's, yeah, basically I said it there. So when I say honing in on the losses, it means like you don't see it as losses, you see it as opportunities for new things. And that's where the trust and faith kind of comes in. You don't need to know what's ahead, that's totally fine. He's definitely had those experiences in the past, especially when he was younger, growing up. I would say something around the age of 27, 26, 27, maybe 28. Loss of something with not only reputation, but what it means for him to, what is reputation for him, and that ties into the 4th house. When we have here all planets right here, all 3, it's also stellium. 0 degrees Uranus, 1 degree Saturn, 9 degrees Neptune. Heavy stuff. So a lot of internal processing of sudden changes with transcending but having those happen kind of gradually because of Saturn. So a lot of limitations happen, a lot of things when it comes specifically to, yes, because it's Capricorn, pertains to reputation, pertains to all those things that felt like stability, limits, groundedness, constancy, everything that represents, that's Capricorn represents, specifically Saturn, which is like, feeling of success, feeling like there is a success in the family environment, feeling that there is, that the family feels whole. But because of Chiron and those things, his experience with it, it means that it's like, oh, there's pain that he's probably still carrying. I'm not sure. So therefore there is there might be an insecurity about it because of the pull. Not only because of the pull, but because the planets in his nadir, or specifically his 4th house. It really pertains to his 4th house. So his sort of sense of security, sense of his instincts are probably kind of feels doubtful. They feel like, I don't know where I'm going, I don't know where how do I even transcend? How do I move on to pass all this stuff? It doesn't. So it doesn't, what he needs to look is not externally, he needs to look internally, completely internally. And really those times when it's like moments of silence, probably almost like a monk life, priesthood sort of life. It was sort of a very solemn, quiet, not just in the meditation in terms of like methods, because that's where it might come off like that, where he probably might want to do that specifically because he has an Earth sun. Earth colors his sun, so he might want to do that. And because of the sense of security from Taurus and Venus as well, because Venus rules Taurus, therefore Venus rules his sun. So there's a lot of security stuff that maybe he wanted to be more grounded, always like there's an attachment to the earth, there's attachment to the 3rd dimension. But again, his North Node is saying, you need to let go. You need to let go, meaning not forget, just let go little by little. And that's where we come back into the Neptune here, because Neptune rules Pisces, therefore it rules his Ceres and his North Node. Neptune right here is telling him, you need to find your own truth within and what is really real. right? If he's gonna get so-called attached to the earthly realm, meaning like the 3D, third dimension, he needs to find ways to see, okay, so this feels real, but is my perception of it what's making it real, or is it, so, but at the same time, not to overthink it, because now this is where it becomes overthinking. With the opposition there might be a sense of overthinking, over-processing the pain, over-processing the loss, over-processing the lack of understanding, over-processing the insecurity, over-processing the sense of lack of safety and all that stuff. But instead, to say, okay, I allow this to happen, therefore I'll trust that the experience that I had comes from it starts with the body. When we were talking a little bit about Eckhart stuff as well. Again, it is not about Eckhart stuff. It's not about the methodology. It's not about the ideology. It's not about all those things. It is the fact that every person has a role to play to remind us of our true essence. Everything is just a tool. In the 3D, everything is a tool, including ideologies, including certain teachings, including certain methods. Meditation itself is a tool, because the essence and root of meditation is not meditation itself. It is being. It's just being. We cannot put it in words. And this is where this applies, where we have the pull, the opposition from Mercury, Chiron. All the three planets are pulling at each other. One wants to be a little earthly, one wants to transcend. But lessons will come again and again. Fears will come if he's not allowing those limits to be a guide. When you have roadblocks, people sometimes look at roadblocks and say, oh, that's a roadblock, so either I stop or I completely avoid it. Rather than seeing it for exactly what it is. There's a roadblock for a reason. It's an actual wholeness reason, wholeness-based reason. It's a cosmic reason why there's roadblocks. It means that our subconscious, our real subconscious, connected to everything, which is weird because we're in the universe. The roadblock is what we want ourselves to learn. Because if we don't have the roadblocks, how do we learn? Right? If we don't have limits, if we don't have the fears, how do we learn from those? We are at Earth School, and yes, Dolores kind of mentioned this. We're in Earth School, so that means that we're here to learn. And so learn we shall. Right? So we have to be open to that learning process without overdoing or underdoing anything. It's like not, right? Balance, wholeness. So with his, I did mention to him also that with, because there's a Capricorn, all three planets here are actually in its 10th house, so that means that as an earth feel to it. It's very, very like, potentially like a feeling of always being earthy. I think probably he is way too much earth. We looked at the actual chart here, the elemental chart here. C here stands for cardinal, F stands for fixed, M stands for mutable. This is fire, air, earth, water. So he has a lot of earth and water. So that means that he has a lot of emotional concerns about security and safety and groundedness and practicality. Right? And that's why his North Node is saying, sweetie, you gotta let go. You probably even more than you think. But when I say let go, I don't mean just like, I don't give a fuck anymore. Just like, release what is. And it's funny because like Neptune right here is in retrograde, so again, it's an internal process. But with Neptune conjunct Uranus and Saturn, the changes are going to take a while, but he has to be aware of those. These three planets, specifically Uranus, creates awareness because it's an awakening planet. So most of the time he'll be awakened through his journey into whatever path lies ahead. Right? Particularly pertaining to the 6th house. So that also means that if he's not conscious about it, because the 6th house rules the unconscious, if we get so comfortable with just letting go, letting go, letting go, and there's no awakening process, there's no, hello, then it's not going to work. It's just going to be remaining unconscious, and it's just, he's not probably even going to do it. He's probably not going to, follow that north node. He's just going to be stuck in the south node, back into the old ways, and just be comfortable. Okay, this is a safety net. It's a safety net, right? We do have here, however, the square aspect from his Mars in Aquarius. So Mars in Aquarius is like, these are weird people. They love to try and get things, the things that they like to do are like weird. They like to experiment on things that are weird. They like to be innovative when it comes to specific also sexuality, sex, anything to do with, usually anything to do with actions. They like to kind of tinker with things. Specifically in this case, he likes to tinker away with, when I say innovative, what's the word for this? State of the art? No, like new medicine, new, more natural, homeopathic stuff, whatever it is, whatever is a trend and beyond. 10 years from now, 100 years from now, what is it going to be? They enjoy that kind of stuff. It kind of adds on to their, you could say, their Martian sort of feel. But it's also square to his sun, so that means it kind of questions his, or at least before, it's kind of brought challenges to a sense of like vitality, sense of like creativity. Sun and Taurus people are quite creative because they have the Taurian quality to Venus thing. They like to, like the art, they like sensuality, they like pleasure, those things. But with Mars there in that quirky side, it's kind of like, it's made him pretty much awake. So technically, if we were to go back to the 6th house stuff here, which is tied to his north node, the Mars is also kind of pulling that. So he's more likely going to be experiencing, you can say, tests throughout his entire life with the sun here, squaring his Mars. So this is a potential for strong will, strong, it's not just willpower, it's like that fire energy that just keeps on going and going and going. It's not like if you have Saturn with Mars or Saturn with the sun. This one is more get going sort of thing. But because it's in like one is earth and one is air, there's a tendency to be challenged between practicality and logic. Right? There is a commitment to the choices that he makes, because we have Pholus here, which is about cause and effect. Apparently it's about cause and effect, the choices we have to make. It's something to do with Pandora's box or whatever, that if you choose something, you better be aware of it. So not to kind of, you have to, it's a little bit also about balance as well. But we have Juno as well, which is about commitment to oneself, or in this case for himself, because it's the sun. It's a certain commitment to loyalty. It's similar to Saturn, or even Jupiter, more like Saturn, but like commitment to something, having that sort of a marriage to that something. So he's married to himself, he's married to his own creativity, he's married to what gives him feel like a child, because of the sun there. Yeah. Jupiter is also in the house there, which is right at home actually. Jupiter is 16 degrees, but it's not conjunct his sun. So Jupiter acts as a kind of, awakens that house. So experiences he has in that house, a lot of optimism towards what makes him happy. So, but there is still a pull with Mars there, because Mars, especially if you have, like I say, a transiting planet towards Mars, let's say if Mars hits the exact sign here, or if it's in the opposite sign, like say Leo, he'll pull at Saturn and say, there's a sort of a maybe irritability, anger issues of angers might it'll come up again. Accidents may also happen. He probably might have gotten to certain little accidents, like, because Aquarius isn't exactly known for its detail-orientedness, but it is ruled by Saturn. So also, just like Uranus and Saturn rules Aquarius. So Aquarius isn't necessarily like the, what do you call this, accident-prone sign. So I wouldn't really worry about that, but there is a tendency to over-intellectualize processes. Probably is sorts of initiative might be kind of like, it can be sudden, it can be sort of a burst of energy of like, I don't know when this will happen. It's unpredictable. Anger is definitely unpredictable, so therefore there's a sense of unpredictability there as well. It's a good thing Uranus is not here, because Uranus would merely mean that it's unpredictable. With Mars just in Aquarius, it just has a kind of a flavor to it that is like quirky. But yes, unpredictability would fit in there as well. What did I say? Oh, I forgot to mention that, yes, so because the Sun is also in the 9th house, and also this applies to, even though it's in Taurus, so it's Earth, there's also fire to it, because 9th house is ruled by Sagittarius. So if we looked at Sagittarius, where is Sagittarius right here? It rules his 4th house. So that means there's a relationship between his sense, I guess you can say longing or desire and wants for adventure and things that are new, things that are philosophically like, things that are wise, things that have to do with the 9th house, things that have to do with long distance travel as well, foreigners, the things that are just like not simple knowledge but higher knowledge, right? It's the house of the superconscious. So this is the house, I believe, that relates to critical thinking. So they teach this in university, of course, but I wouldn't be surprised that this is the 9th house as well. So, but probably might kind of make his earthiness of Taurus, makes him a little less stubborn, because you have, first of all, in Taurus, okay, and then you have it in the, and then Venus rules that, but then because Venus rules his Sun, there's that sort of more watery feel to it. There's a lot of emotional, he feeds off of that. You can say that when it comes to his Sun, he gets vitality off of an emotional connection with people, particularly foreigners, or particularly anything to do with like whatever business he takes, he kind of feels like he needs to have that. If it's not a need, then, because we have here the Moon, which was in Cancer, it's sextile to his Sun. So that kind of need, his basic needs, which is his Moon, which is the Moon, it's right at home in Cancer. So naturally, okay, a sense of security, a sense of need, a sense of basic, the need to really connect at an emotional level, but also physical as well. The need to touch. So I would say like a lot of like, yeah, trust probably can be questioned if there's no sense of like trust with, because the Moon rules Cancer, but it also rules through Cancer the 4th house. But because he's had a sort of unstable experience with that in the past, and hopefully he's learned to balance that with his reputation. We talked about it earlier. The Moon, his experience with his own, or like his own, you can say his DNA, what his instincts are telling him, ties back into also the Deer here, which ties back into the 9th house. So before he gets into any sort of like traveling, he has to feel like it has to be secure. It has to feel like, okay, it has to be a certain way. I can't just rush things. Not only because of, the slow moving Taurus, but also because of Cancer here. So there's three things, but there is a Sagittarian pull here as well. So Sagittarian here goes a little bit more adventure, be a little bit braver, be a little bit more like risk-taking, so to speak. Not like Aries risk-taking, but definitely, yeah. So possibly like a certain type of, I wouldn't say necessarily athleticism, but something to do with action, something to do with that, which is really funny because again, Sun was square to his Mars. So again, because of the unpredictability of Mars in Aquarius, you don't know when he's gonna take action, and that's fine. That's just what it is. That's his whole contract. What else was there? Technically, Pallas Athena is conjunct his not only 6th house cusp, but also his Mars. So, but Pallas Athena was in Aquarius, so Pallas Athena is about this ability that we need to be a little more strategic, because knowing that everything is connected, you have to be careful about. It's kind of almost like Pholos. It's sort of in a certain way. It's like Pallas Athena knows that there's a connection, and because it's retrograde. Oh, there's no retrograde. Sorry, I thought it was retrograde. Yeah, it's not retrograde. So anyway, so he has this ability to kind of connect the dots, right? Particularly with the 5th house. So regarding children, regarding anything creative, recreational things, the love that he gives, he's able to do that in a very sort of Aquarian way. But Aquarius doesn't rule his 5th house. Capricorn does. So it ties back to Saturn. So pulls it back a little bit and saying that Saturn rules his 5th house, but also Pallas Athena, because there is a planet there. It's both. So there's a lot of like processing when it comes to romantic relationships. Takes things slowly. Yes, there's an intellectualization of experiences with romantic relationships, even children, recreational stuff, any 5th house stuff. So he doesn't just give love as well, he also processes it. It's like, right? And Pallas Athena is great because it's like, it's not just the knowledge, it's wisdom. It's inner wisdom, it's connectivity to the higher realms. That's Pallas Athena. And we already talked about this. I told him that it's like based on mythology. Athena, not just Pallas Athena, but Athena was goddess of wisdom, but also weaving, so connectivity, right? And she was born not out of any sort of procreative means. She was born directly straight from Zeus's head. So that means that Pallas Athena is basically knows about wisdom. So it's not just warfare. When I say warfare, in this case, it's your own, you can see your inner demons. When you have Pallas Athena, look to Pallas Athena in your chart when you want to look for, I guess you can see how to battle your inner demons or whatever it is. But it's basically that fight that isn't about necessarily fighting. It's the, it's the wisdom to know when to take action. Because fighting, what is fighting? It's basically related to action, right? Which is actually funny because it's conjunct his Mars. Yeah, you could say, yeah, it's conjunct his Mars. Because technically right here, because of the minutes, if you could see that, 19 degrees, 35 minutes, it's rounded up to 20 right away. So right away, it's conjunct to Mars. So definitely an instinctive sort of inner wisdom, because that's Mars. So his willpower is, he has this ability to like process and know what to do with action. So it is unpredictable, like I said, but because of Aquarius, but that's fine. There's also wisdom through that because Uranus rules Aquarius as well. it ties right in back to Saturn retrograde. So the inner disciplines, the inner processing of fears, knowing what fears, knowing what he's afraid of, and probably just learning to let that go. And makes sense now, which ties back into the North house, the North Node. He's definitely learned to do that. Thank goodness for these retrogrades. Well, that's his soul contract, so he chose to do that. He's choosing to do that, so great.